It's top 10 UK coaster time, but however, I haven't ridden all of the coasters in the UK, such as Saw the Ride version 2, Saw the Ride version 3, and the second most recent wooden coaster in the UK. Jeez, that took a while for them to get in. 21 years! Anyway, without further ado, it's time to rank the top 10 coasters in the UK. In my opinion, keep that in mind, it's in my opinion. You can post yours in the comments if you'd like to, see how it differs compared to my list, because I'm sure there'll be one or two things that are pretty controversial in here. So with that being said, let's get into it. So we're already starting off controversial because of recent opinions. A lot of people seem to like Saw a lot more than I do. I don't hate it. I don't think it's an awful ride. It is a little bit jolty towards the end, but again, I can live with that. But it does rank 10th in my top 10 UK coaster list. Not sure why I needed to actually specify that, because it's pretty obvious. It's got good theming, for the UK especially. It's a decent layout. The airtime hill towards the end of the ride is pretty good. The indoor section as a whole is really good as well. And it's just very different every time you ride it, because one time it'll be quite smooth compared to other rides which will be insanely rough, and you'll literally just be going, oh, I hit my head, oh god. Next up is Colossus. Yes, I find it slightly more bearable than Saw. So be it. Now, in all retrospect, I didn't really know which way I was going to put this round, because sometimes I do go to Thorpe Park and I prefer Saw to Colossus, and then other times I've been there, I prefer Colossus to Saw. It's pretty much on the same kind of level, I guess, because this Colossus is a little bit jolty in some places. The 4 Heartline rolls, because of the restraints, it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but as I said, not too fussed about that either. There are some bits, as I said, that are a little bit jolty here and there, but it's like Saw, there's a few bits of that as well that are a little bit bad. So I can't really decide between the two where I put it, but I guess I'm just going to edge Colossus a bit over, because I've had better rides on that this year than I have Saw. Moving on over to Alton Towers, the one-trick pony of the century, although it was built in I messed that up. Oblivion at Alton Towers was the world's first B&M dive coaster. I won't call it a 90-degree drop because it is 87 degrees, but basically it was the first of its kind ever, and it is a brilliant ride. It has a really good drop. Obviously, that's the main part of it. It's the most forceful drop on a B&M dive that I've ever done, and it's probably the best drop, especially with the underground tunnel on it. And it just, yeah, that's why it sits at 8th in my top 10 UK coasters. It may not be the longest ride, but it is pretty good and pretty forceful. Yeah, it does last like 4 seconds, so you know. Next up is Nemesis Inferno. A lot of people seem to prefer this ride to the original Nemesis at Alton Towers now, but I am one to disagree with that. I'll get onto that soon. So, Nemesis Inferno, Thorpe Park, is in the jungle area. It has a very, I wouldn't say bland theme, but it's a very generic theme of the jungle, but it's still really good. It's got the mist tunnel right at the start, which is great, especially if you're at the front. And some of the elements on it are really intense, such as the kind of bottom of the vertical loop into the 0G roll, and also the interlocking corkscrews are really good as well. Overall, a really good ride, and I prefer Nemesis, so we'll see where that ranks soon. Then we have Wicker Man at Alton Towers. Now, if you have watched my best rides at Alton Towers, you may be a bit confused here and thinking, hang on a minute, why did you say Wicker Man was the best at Towers, yet you haven't ranked Smiler, Nemesis, Galactica, all them lot yet? Well, the thing is, Wicker Man is a great themed experience, and that is why it is overall my favourite Alton Towers. But thrill-wise, I'd say it ranks a bit lower. It is a family coaster, of course, but the theming and everything about it just makes it insane, and the pre-show is really well done. There's some really good effects on it when they're working, and just in general, the whole ride as a whole, if it didn't have the theming, it obviously wouldn't be that great of a coaster, but because it has the theming, it's even better than it would have been without. It does pick up a lot of speed throughout the entire thing, and back row is definitely the place to sit, especially at night. I did a front row night ride on it last year, and I really want to get a back row night ride on it because I think that'd be insane. Then we have the Swarm, which is a B&M wing coaster at Thorpe Park. Like Wicker Man, it has really good theming around the area, some decent effects when they're working, and the ride itself, it's pretty decent. You do go through quite a few different head choppers, such as the plane wing at the bottom, the billboard, and the church itself as the station as well. And there's quite a few throughout the ride, and that really makes it for me. I know it's not really rated that highly because of the restraints, and they can be a little bit uncomfortable, which is true, but a back left ride on it can be pretty insane. At one point, a lot of people tend to say it's not that intense, but you can start to grey out into the corkscrew on the Swarm. I don't know why that happens to me. Maybe I'm just low on G-force tolerance, and maybe I'm just a wuss. At number 4 is the Smiler at Alton Towers. This ride is crazy. It has 14 inversions, if you didn't know, which I presume most of you do, and it holds that world record for the most amount of inversions. But also throughout the ride, it has very strange theming, but it's really good, and it can be a little bit rough, but that doesn't take away from the enjoyment of it because it's a really good ride. And also, my favourite bit of it, despite it having 14 inversions, is the second airtime hill into the Cobra Roll. That bit is insane. Yeah.
Place your heads back, face forwards, hold on tight and brace yourself.
Stealth at Thorpe Park. This ride is 205 foot tall, so it is one of the tallest in the UK and launches at 80 mile an hour, one of the fastest, if not the fastest. I don't really know, I think it is the fastest in the UK, 80 miles an hour. This ride is insane. It may be short, it may be over very quick, but honestly, it packs a punch. On the front row, that launch is just insane. The acceleration of it is insane. And the views from the top are great. You do get a slight bit of airtime on the back row if you're going over the top hat and the end hill. But other than that, it's just a really good ride. The launch, intense, forceful. It's just a good ride. In the number 2 spot is Nemesis at Alton Towers. This ride is packed with a bunch of low to the ground elements, and it's very intense, hence why I like it so much. You do tend to grey out at the bottom of that helix downwards after the corkscrew. I tend to do it, I guess, once again because the same reasons as Swarm. But yeah, Nemesis is packed with intensity, it's low to the ground, it goes through all these tunnels, and it's just really dug down into the ground. But it does look very nice since they did the TLC on it, and it's riding better than it ever has before, I guess. Yes, yeah, it's just a very good ride, and that's why it ranks second in my top 10. I say this every time, why do I need to clarify what list this is? You know it's the top. And then at number 1 is of course Icon at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. This ride, it's insane. It's packed with everything a coaster really should be. It's long in layout and duration. It has a bunch of airtime in it. It has sort of two inversions, but don't want to get involved in that mess. But yeah, it may be quite slow in the mornings because obviously it hasn't warmed up yet, but if you get a night ride or a late day ride on it, it is insane. It speeds through the elements and everything. Crazy amounts of airtime on the back row. I did do an Icon review, but it's kind of outdated because I did say that I prefer the front to the back. But now, after having 3 in a row night rides on the back row, on that ride, I think back row is just the best row in my opinion. You get whipped over every single element. It's just insane. If you haven't been to Blackpool yet and you haven't ridden Icon, I definitely recommend going. It's such a good ride. As for any of these coasters on this list, if you haven't been on any of them. Anyway, that's it. Geez, I didn't realise how long this video's been. Editing it up is just, I'm sorry for how long it is. But, hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to subscribe if you're new here. It'd be greatly appreciated. And also, we're bringing it back. 1 like equals 1 like. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.